Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast today. I've got a special guest for you today, Dr. Jessica, but she goes by Jessica, coming out of the Bay Area. And she actually does something very interesting. She is the Silicon Valley sex coach, and she actually helps high income professionals, executives, doctor, lawyer, dentists, a lot of the audience, and enhance their relationships, their love life, either spouse or dating or relationships. And I'm really happy to have her on to discuss this area of expertise. So, Jessica, welcome.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah, you have an interesting story, and a lot of audience there listen to this. They're like, "Whoa!" But introduce yourself, and we'll dive right into the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So some people call me the Silicon Valley sex coach, and I also call myself an executive relationship coach for men and couples in tech. And do you want me to say more about how I got here, a little bit about the story, or is that good for now?
Yeah, but just enlighten whatever the you feel like the audience would benefit from.
Yeah. So getting into this career was very unexpected for me. It was the last thing I thought I'd ever be doing. I grew up in a religious conservative small town in West Texas. And I was a scientist. So I went to MIT and I wanted to study course 16 aeroastroengineering, but I ended up becoming a chemist. I loved working with my hands and this dance of bonding that the molecules did. And we had some really charismatic OChem professors. Then I did a PhD and a postdoctoral fellowship in neuroscience. And I was all science all the time, totally in my left brain, really thinking of the emotions of distractions and the body as a distraction. And really to succeed at MIT and at my PhD at Berkeley, which was the #1 graduate school for chemistry PhDs, you had to just cut yourself off from the neck down and work like a robot. And I know a lot of my friends who are programmers and who are MDs say the same thing. It's just brutal to get through school. And what happened to me after that, I finished my postdoc. And I had always wanted to be a professor, but something in me broke open. I went to Burning Man one too many times, is the way I say it sometimes. And I was having chronic fatigue, generalized anxiety, drinking too much, and my social interactions were really challenging and stressful. And then my marriage was full of anguish. And something in me said, you're not supposed to be doing this anymore. And I remember the day I was pipetting with a multi-channel pipetter and triplicate 96 well play. It's this radioactive substance. And I was like, I don't think, yeah, it was just the voice in my heart broke through and said, you're not supposed to be doing this. And I talk about that moment in my TED Talk too. And so it took all the courage I had, but I left my career. I was really embarrassed. I was really ashamed. What is my family going to think? But I didn't see a way forward. And I went on a journey around the world to, on purpose, do things that scared me, to say yes to anything that I would have habitually closed down to. And so I ended up doing a lot of different meditation retreats, yoga retreats. I did contact improvisation dance. It's this improvised and very full body contact dance form that it was really a huge jump for me in my nervous system. I did Kundalini and I discovered Tantra. And in that process, I wasn't looking for a spiritual teacher. I was wedded to science and I wasn't looking for awakening. I didn't know what that was, but it happened. Something happened where at the end of a ritual at this particular Tantra school, I found myself catapulted out of my mind and into my body. And I like to say from trying to be like a man into relaxing into the feminine. I didn't know what that was. I didn't want that, but it was happening. And it felt like I had been dead before. It felt like life had been in black and white. And I reconnected to some deep power and energy that was always running through me. And I realized what it could feel like to walk through life not having to try so hard, but relaxing into my center, into my self-worth, into confidence. It was a huge revelation. And I've spent 4 years living in spiritual communities in Asia after that and doing all the personal growth work I could find. I was so furious that no one had taught me any of these things that I learned before my divorce. So my marriage ended in divorce. And then only after that did I learn all about attachment theory and trauma healing and all of the different modalities that are available to us today: conscious communication, emotional regulation. I had never, in my entire 30 years of life at that point, I had never had a single class or had a single teacher who said, hey, these are basic self-awareness skills you should learn. These are basic relational skills that would help you. There weren't any classes available in that at MIT or at Berkeley at the time. I hope that it's different now. And I thought, wow, I could really have used some of these skills in my marriage before I got painfully divorced and ended up with no career, no house, no income, alone on a tropical island, not knowing what would become of my life. So after 4 years of studying and embodying this work, I started my first business. And that's how I started Bliss Science.
Interesting. And so there's a lot to unravel there. One thing is when you what's interesting is you have this idea of called relational intelligence. And you said these kind of, especially in relationships and marriages, with like emotional intelligence, these conscious community, these are well-known terms, but how do you apply relational intelligence to improve their personal relationships, i.e. romantic relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like one of your previous guests was saying, we often don't realize how much unconscious narratives are ruling the show, how much we're just playing out unexamined patterns and habits that were inherited from society, culture, religion, or family. And so relational intelligence is about bringing the light of awareness to what exactly you're doing in your relationship. In my marriage, I was just trying to control it because I had slotted us into these roles, these pre-existing unconscious roles that I had been given about how things are supposed to be. And then I was trying to make them work that way using logic only. But relational intelligence asks us to consider, what kind of relationship do we want? What roles do we want to play? What are our priorities, our boundaries here? And how do we talk about that? It also asks us to come into radical acceptance of the truth of our moment to moment experience of life. And that is a profound journey for most of us because it means considering that it's okay to be you. It's okay to have the feelings, the reactions that you're having. The essential is to just notice what is true for you and then consider, how do you want to communicate this? What do you want to do about it? Instead of trying to measure up to some imagined ideal or some unconscious role that you're playing out. And I have found that when I do that, I get to relax. I get to be really honest. I get to connect more deeply. And I have this foundation of love, vitality, connection, safety in my relationship that is this springboard that allows my success in my businesses.
Interesting. Yeah. Again, you unraveled a lot, and I think we may have a part two. But one thing is talking about, because you talked about Tantra and you label yourself as a tantric scientist. And what is tantric mentality, and how can people apply it to not just their marriages or relationships, as well as their careers or businesses, all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that is also a deep discussion, deep and fascinating. So when most people think of Tantra, what they're thinking of is what I call American Neo-Tantra. American Neo-Tantra is a path that basically was developed over the past 150 years. It's very recent. And what it focuses on is the unshaming of our sexual self and using our sexuality and our desire with awareness. So imagine being able to talk about sex in your relationship, being able to not be ashamed of your desire, being able to try new things like an experimenter, like a scientist in the bedroom without having to just perform or play out, again, unconscious roles. So that's American Neo-Tantra.
Mm.
But classical Tantra is a sophisticated spiritual path like Buddhism. It is an awareness practice and a liberation practice designed to liberate you from suffering, right? From the constant cycle of samsara, of joy and pain in life. And so classical Tantra is about meditation. It's about mantras. It's about working with your energy. to empower you. Now, the radical thing about classical Tantra that changed my life is that it's an embodied spiritual practice. It's not about up and out transcending and leaving the body as a distraction to awakening. It's about using everything that's going on for you. So all of your energy, all of your emotions and thoughts as a path to awakening. So when I say I'm a tantric scientist, what that means is now I'm an embodied scientist. So instead of just trying to logic my way through life, I have incorporated all of my wisdom centers into how I live my life.
Oh, interesting. I have two questions. So first question is, how is tantric mentality different from like yogic practices? You get into your body, or it actually helps you to identify the areas of that you're placing your attention in, and it's, how is that different?
I just love this question. I love talking to MD PhDs. They're asking better questions than most people. Thank you. Yeah. So this is a very fascinating. I mean, that question is in the whole thesis in itself. But what I will say is that yoga asana practice that we've inherited is based on an ascetic tradition. So it became highly asceticized. So it's about go in a cave, do your practice, and transcend. It's about up and out, essentially. So even though you are using your body, it can tend to be a little bit dismissive. Like it's about purifying the body. It's about getting better. It's about moving your energy up. Whereas tantric embodiment is about down and in. It's finding the true self, the truth of who you are, going deeper within to you. And it's not about trying to be better or different, but it's about noticing what is and working with that with acceptance.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's the start of the explanation.
Yeah, interesting. And what I found interesting during your introduction was you talked about being an MIT scientist and you work with very high achieving, very logical individuals, and you had this awakening moment. And my question to you is, because I didn't have that awakening via your route, but I had this awakening is like, yeah, the healthcare system is not for you, and you're gonna be doing something else. And what does this mentality or practice apply to creatives? Because it sounds like you are a creative in a very logical, very regimented field. Is it like the creative awakening, or is it just everybody?
Let me see if I understand. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. For example, sometimes you have really logical scientists. Just they're happy with their marriage. Could be sexless, could be whatever. They just have that stereotypical, like they married a spouse, had kids, they had a house, and they have a career. And then there's others which I encounter a lot in millennials and Gen Z. It's like these creatives. There's writers, bloggers, YouTubers, and they have this yearning and the sense of freedom that you are describing. So, like, what does this sort of, my question was, how do professionals, like the people that aren't awake, prioritize their sex lives and relationships as much as their work or fitness routines?
Yes, that's a great question. So one of the gifts of tantric practices is it asks us to, for example, meditate on death.
Um,
So if you were to consider that you were to die tomorrow or to meditate on your own death, what suddenly becomes vitally important to you? And no one ever on their deathbed has said, I wished I worked more. But what might be more important to you is finishing your financial success, your entrepreneurial success, and that is totally fine. But that is a helpful way to get clear on what is your priority.
Mm.
And when I had this awakening, I didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I love my mind. I love logic. I love solving problems. But I found that life, it's not about putting a huge chunk of time on my sex life or relationship. It's about my moment to moment experience of my body, my life, the erotic. And what Tantra gives us are micro practices. I'm doing them right now while I'm talking to you. Because it accepts our energies in our bodies, it lets us become Jedi Knight masters of how we use our energy in those moment to moment moments of our life.
Mhm.
And so it's about while you're being interviewed or while you're typing, is your energy like up here? And And if you love, that's okay. But for me, that didn't lead anywhere good long term. So it's, can I breathe it through my body? Can I find the pleasure like in this moment as I'm typing? And as I walk down the hallway to the kitchen and I find my partner there, what kind of energy am I running through my body right then? Again, is it tight, jittery energy from the head only and like talking? Or can you move it down and run like heart energy between the two of you just while you pass by her in the kitchen? Can you bring a little sense of that frisson of aliveness by kissing her 3 times on the neck or twirling her hair as you pass by, right? Can you just bring that shiver of delight into everything you do? Now, this doesn't have to be for you. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But I found that in my life, it made it so much more fun, deeper, and just more less dry. It spiced up everything in my life to move with this awareness. And it's an ongoing practice every day of, okay, what's my energy doing? Where is my awareness? How can I bring more pleasure in here? How can I make this more juicy? So that's the invitation.
Interesting. Because I studied spirituality and self-development, and I studied relationships just to improve all areas. And
Yes.
the book was like The Way of the Superior Man by David Data. And he was talking about, and Tony Robbins talks about like this, in order to maintain a really vibrant marriage, you have to have polarity. And so like this masculine and feminine. And you're an MIT scientist. So can you, explain neuroscience, how you keep that polarity, how you keep that chemistry so that the divorce rate or the infidelity rate is a lot lower. Talk about that.
Absolutely. So there's both a spiritual level here and a nervous system level. From the nervous system level, what we know, and we've had great advances in research and connection in the past 30 years. It's worth a study. Anyway, so what we know is that it's important to create both safety and spark, as I call it, in your relationship. Like in order to feel close and connected, there needs to be a sense of, okay, I'm safe with you. It's okay for me to let down my defenses and my guard. But in order to keep the passion alive, there also needs to be a little sense of danger, a sense of mystery and the unknown. As Esther Perel says, desire needs a bridge to cross. And most of us were never taught to consciously cultivate either of those things. And what happens is we either get stuck in too much safety and we're just like glommed on and safe all the time. And that's not hot. That feels like a wet blanket. Or we've never been taught to value emotional safety. So we're just trying to make the spark happen all the time. But there's all of these underlying hurts that haven't been dealt with. And so it just feels like adding insult to injury if you're just like, come on, do you want to have sex? Do you want to have sex? Without creating the emotional safety. And in terms of the spiritual teachings, I think they understood that. What I love about polarity work is it asks me to become aware, again, of what are the unconscious roles that I'm playing out in relationship. So for me, before my awakening, I was trying to be like a man because I felt that essentially the feminine or being female was less than, would be disrespected. And it is often disrespected in the world. But what that meant is that in my marriage, I was trying to control things. I was stuck in my head. I would never relax and receive and just like surrender to anything. And it was like two of us trying to be in our masculine, and it doesn't work. Like there's no connection there. Neither of us would receive. But I also find that sometimes for men, they're stuck in the nice guy paradigm of just trying to do whatever she wants, bending over backwards to please her, to make her happy. And they're not holding that masculine pull with good boundaries, with centeredness, with letting her have a bridge to cross to get to you. And rather than trying to stick men in a masculine role or women in a feminine role, which is not what this is about at all, I like to invite people to play across their entire energetic range. Maybe some days you want to be more gooey and surrendered. Maybe some other days you want to be more directing and in holding the masculine pole. But notice, where do you get stuck? Do you pigeonhole yourself somewhere on the range? And what would it be like to cultivate other types of abilities as well?
Interesting. Because I spend a lot of time outside of the United States, and I find that the United States is like, you have around sex, you have guilt and shame, but then the media like portrays it like it's you have Victoria's Secret or you have the NFL or the NBA. How they portray, but like in Europe, like they have a very healthy concept of sex and sexual relations. Same thing in Latin America. And so, what kind of role does media, pornography, all of this play in? I want to say dysregulating this concept of sexual energy, polarity, relationships. Because the divorce rate, they say it's 50%. I think it's 80 or 90%. And I think a lot of people are not getting married now, and they're not having kids, and a lot of people are lonely. And they said that people having sex is a lot less now. Talk about kind of cultural, social influences.
They're huge, and they project this idea of perfection, or that all men are supposed to be this way and all women are supposed to be that way. And then most of my clients are beating themselves up and feeling despondent, like they'll never find someone or they'll never measure up because they're not perfect, like the media example. And it's this odd thing where like the media gives us this idea of like sex as performance, and then religion and culture just shames us around it. So we're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to educate ourselves around it, but we're supposed to perform perfectly. It's a recipe for disaster. No wonder everyone is, I'm not doing any of this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I know we're coming to the end. There's one talk about, because you talked about traumas. And for example, again, in the Western hemisphere, you've got the macho guy, you have the playboy, you have the very successful kind of these stereotypes, as well as, the female stereotypes, and how that relates to like your past traumas and how that creates a dysfunctional sexual relationship.
That's a big question for the last question.
Stuff I forget about.
I think it's well known that we create defensive mechanisms because there were certain ways we had to be in order to survive when we were growing up.
Mhm.
And so if we felt like we wouldn't be respected unless we were macho or big, then we can have that veneer. That's what's leading the way when we're older. And so what's important in the work when you come to work with a coach or a therapist is to recognize that as a defense, respect it, that it was there for a good reason, but then get in touch with your vulnerable self underneath, like your true self and your true desires, and allow that to lead the way.
Mhm.
So I actually founded an AI company, a tech company last year, and we just got funded, called Digital Wisdom. And I created this company to marry my passion for personal growth work with technology. And so this will allow people to access wisdom like personal growth, ask all your questions about sex and relationships. You can ask Jessica Gold AI, it's my app on the App Store. You can ask her 24/7. So I created her with my life story, my method of coaching. Because what I saw is that people have so much shame around this and they don't know where to go for help, or they're feeling too ashamed to even ask for help. So I wanted to provide a method for people to get help without anyone having to know about it.
Yeah, really, because heard Esther Pearl. She gave a talk at South by Southwest. I can't remember if it was last year, but she also has this kind of AI type avatar where clients, because she's a sex therapist. Final question. Hopefully, is somebody listening to this and they're still stuck in the matrix. They're daydreaming, sleepwalking through life, and they know their marriage is like just boring and stale. And like, what's your advice to them for waking up and just looking in? Because it reminds me of this movie where just people are just like they're just going about their daily lives, and all of a sudden the woman sees like a very attractive the pool boy or something, and she has an affair, and it leads to all this things. How do people actually wake up?
You're not ready till you're ready. Even though I was infuriated that I'd never had a single class in how to be a healthy human in my entire scientific career that spanned 10 years, if there had been a class, I wouldn't have taken it because I had been raised to really disdain that stuff and to see
Mm.
it as weak and gross and uncouth. But I slowly was putting myself in situations with new kinds of people, new environments, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it was like cracks started to show in my armor. So even if you're sleepwalking and you have this sense that something's not right, but you don't know what to do about it and you feel too ashamed of it, just start talking to trusted mentors, to people who, if you have a little sense inside of you, I like what that person's doing. I don't understand it, but I want to learn from them. Just read or listen and Start slowly, taking one step. What would one step look like in that direction? But so those are the two things. Do move toward what scares you, but slowly. Take your time. And the second thing is put death in front of your life and consider, okay, if you were going to die tomorrow, what becomes vitally important to you right now? And
Um,
that meditation is so helpful in overcoming fears.
yeah. It says, I love the saying, when the student is ready, the master will appear. Sometimes it hits you like blindsides you, and sometimes it's this little inkling, which you described so nicely. So, how can people reach out to you and check out your work and follow you in all of that?
Yeah, thanks. So my website is bliss-science.com, bliss-science.com. You can email me, jessica@bliss-science.com. And I just started a new Instagram because my old one got shadow banned because I talked too much about sex. You know how it goes these days. But I would love new followers on my new Insta, which is at Dr. Jessica Gold. Doctor is DR. And yeah, so check it out. Reach out to me with your questions. I have a Facebook group too called Passionate Relationships for Powerful Men. There's women in the group too. It's a great conversation between the genders. I'm creating like a more intentional, safer space to be really real there.
Mm. Yeah, and I really enjoyed this conversation and keep up the great work. And I encourage the audience to check out Jessica's socials, give them a follow and reach out to her. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Dr. Lou.